Imagine this. You've poured your heart into something. Relationship, a dream, and a version of yourself you thought the world would finally embrace. And then it comes silence. A door that doesn't open, a gaze that looks right through you. Rejection, not just a denial of effort, but a brutal dismissal of your very being. Doesn't just sting, it echoes. It carves into the walls of your mind like acid, rewriting who you believe you are. But what if the pain of rejection wasn't a sign of weakness, but a doorway? What if the very thing you've been told to overcome, suppress, or avoid was the thing that could make you dangerous in the best way? Carl Jung once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." Yet no one tells you that rejection is one of those shadows. A living, breathing archetype that visits each of us not to destroy, but to awaken something forgotten. Why, then, do most people flee from it? Why do we cling to acceptance like it's salvation, when the greatest minds in history were often outcasts, misunderstood, even exiled? Could it be that rejection is not a wound, but a test? Look deeper. What does rejection strip away from you? And what does it leave behind? What version of yourself dies in its grip? And what version waits silently in its aftermath, untouched by praise or criticism? You've been taught to see rejection as failure. But what if that's the greatest lie ever told? The answer lies in places most fear to go. In the depths of the unconscious, where monsters roam, yes. But so too does your power. And it's there that we begin to understand what Jung truly knew. But first, what exactly are we really fighting against? Rejection hurts. Yes, but not merely because we've lost something external. It hurts because it forces us to confront something most of us spend our entire lives trying to avoiding, the possibility that we are not who we thought we were. What Jung uncovered, quietly, uncomfortably, is that rejection doesn't simply bruise the ego. It reveals the ego's fragility, our carefully constructed identity, built from childhood scripts, societal validation, and the illusion of control begins to crack under the weight of rejection, not because rejection is cruel, but because it's honest. Thinkers like Nietzsche and Schopenhauer saw through this long before us. They knew that most people don't want truth, they want comfort. Rejection strips away comfort with surgical precision. It tears at the mask, revealing the raw, shivering self beneath. And that, right there, is the hidden problem. We are so estranged from our authentic selves that when the world does not affirm us, we collapse. But Jung went further. He believed we spend our lives projecting our disowned parts onto others. Our shadow, he called it. And rejection, it's the world holding up a mirror to that shadow. It shows us where we are still seeking external approval because we have not yet integrated what is most vital within. Why do you need that person to say yes to you? Why does being passed over for that job make you feel invisible? Why does silence from someone you admire feel like annihilation? Because your worth, whether you admit it or not, has been outsourced, and the world, uninterested in your carefully curated self, often returns it to you shattered. But Jung's truth was dark for a reason. He knew that until you face the parts of you that rejection reveals, the abandoned child, the desperate pleaser, the quiet rage, you will never be free. You'll keep building identities fragile enough to please others, but too weak to endure life. And here lies the paradox. Rejection is not the enemy. It is the call to integration. But ignore that call, and the consequences grow louder, more insidious, and far more dangerous. So the question must now turn. What happens when we don't answer that call? You may think ignoring rejection is harmless, a temporary sting, quickly soothed by distraction or pride. But unaddressed, it festers. Rejection denied becomes identity distorted. Your mind, ever the survivalist, rewires itself to avoid pain at all costs. The result? A life dictated by avoidance. You stop applying, you stop expressing. You dull your edges, you shrink. Not visibly, not dramatically, but in the quiet, terrifying way a tree bends toward shadows to escape the storm. This is the silent agreement most people make with life. I will be smaller if it means I will not be cast aside. But smaller doesn't mean safer. It means invisible. The brain, desperate for patterns, begins interpreting all uncertainty as threat. A look not returned becomes a sign of worthlessness. A delay in response confirms you're forgettable. It's not logic driving you. It's cognitive biased confirmation bias, negativity bias, rejection sensitivity. Neural circuits burn these distortions into memory, and suddenly the world becomes hostile even when it's not. Culture doesn't help. We're bred on filtered success, on curated lives, on the illusion that constant validation is both possible and necessary. Those who deviate from the script, who are weird, intense, rebellious, too quiet, too loud, too different, are cast out, digitally or otherwise. You become a ghost in your own story, haunted by who you might have been had you not feared the next. No, but worse still is what happens internally. You reject yourself. You begin editing your personality to survive rejection. You disown the passionate parts, the chaotic parts, the visionary parts, trading them for likability, compliance, and ease. Your inner fire is extinguished not by failure, but by 1,000 quiet self-betrayals. And here is the tragedy Jung saw so clearly. When the shadow is denied, it does not disappear. It grows stronger, more volatile. It returns as depression, rage, numbness, addiction. All because you mistook rejection for a verdict, when it was only ever a signal. So the stakes are far higher than we were told. And now, a deeper question arises. If rejection is the map, then how do we learn to read it? Or better yet, how do we use it to escape the prison it once built around us? To break free, you must become something society fears uncontrollable. This rebellion does not start outside. It begins in the silence after rejection, when the old self begins to crumble and you resist the urge to glue it back together. You let it fall. You let the false self, the one that was desperate for approval, addicted to applause, die. Carl Jung didn't advocate for comfort. He demanded confrontation. Integration, he said, requires turning toward the shadow. Not to destroy it, but to listen. To realize that the parts of you that are rejected, your anger, your creativity, your sexual energy, your ambition, are not flaws. They are power unclaimed. You want freedom. Then take back what rejection taught you to exile. Start with this true thing. You do not need to be accepted to be whole. Acceptance is fleeting. Identity built on it is fragile. But when you confront the dark places, when you look rejection in the face and ask, "What truth about me does this reveal?" you become something Rorerig's self-owned. History is shaped by people who were once rejected. Van Gogh, Kierkegaard, Baldwin. They did not conform. They transcended. They turned rejection into prophecy, not by begging for approval, but by cultivating such a clear inner truth that no external denial could erase it. This is the counterintuitive truth, and the less you depend on acceptance, the more powerful you become. When rejection no longer defines you, it becomes a tool, refining, sharpening, redirecting. You stop shrinking. You stop silencing. You create not for applause, but from necessity. You speak because silence would be betrayal. You love without asking for permission. You live without waiting to be chosen. And the world, confused at first, will feel it. The immovable force. The person no longer playing the game. That is power. And it was born from rejection. But there is one final truth. A revelation deeper than rebellion. One that doesn't just change how you respond to rejection. It changes what rejection is. And that truth, it's what Jung saw in the abyss, and what most people never dare to face. Rejection is not the opposite of acceptance. It is initiation, not into failure, but into authenticity, into the part of you that exists beyond roles, beyond titles, beyond the masks you were told would make you lovable. A Carl Jung understood something that still terrifies the modern psyche. Rejection is the outer world echoing the inner divide. Every no from outside points to a part of you that you have already disowned. You feared your wildness, so their silence hurt. You hid your depth, so their dismissal wounded you. The rejection was never from them. It was always from you. And so the greatest paradox is this: rebellion begins. What hurts the most is not that they didn't choose you. It's that you didn't choose yourself first. Jung called it individuation, the sacred process of becoming who you truly are. But this becoming requires a descent, not into perfection, but into the fractured, disjointed truth of who were before the world told you who to be. Rejection forces that descent. It shatters the illusion of belonging so you can belong to yourself. This is the final truth. Rejection is not the door closing. It is the fire that burns the false doors away. You are not here to be chosen. You are here to remember, to reassemble the broken archetypes within, the child who was silenced, the lover who was abandoned, the warrior who was laughed at, the artist who was ignored. You gather them all. You say, "I see you. I need you." And in that moment, something ancient stirs, something the world cannot give or take away, a self that cannot be rejected, because it is no longer performing, it is being. And when you rise from that fire, scarred, radiant, terrifying in your clarity, the world changes, not because it accepts you, but because you no longer require its permission to exist. So next time rejection comes, don't flinch, don't run. Sit with it, look it in the eyes, ask it what it came to teach you, then walk forward. Not in spite of the rejection, but because of it. You are no longer afraid of being cast out, because you have entered into yourself, into truth, into power.